Blast off into the cosmos. Welcome to Deep Cosmos, your source for space news and global breaking updates. Subscribe if you're new. Let's dive into the video now. A tariff is a tax imposed by a government on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. These taxes are collected at the border and they directly affect the price of imported products. Tariffs have been used for centuries as a tool to regulate trade, generate revenue for governments, and influence the flow of goods between nations. The main purpose of a tariff is to make foreign products less competitive compared to those made at home. By increasing the cost of imports, tariffs encourage consumers to buy domestically produced goods, which can help local businesses grow and create jobs. For example, if a German car is shipped to America, a tariff will be added to its price, making it more expensive for American buyers. This price difference can persuade consumers to choose a locally manufactured car instead, supporting the domestic auto industry. This system is intended to protect local industries and jobs, giving them a better chance to compete against large international companies that might otherwise dominate the market. However, while tariffs can help domestic workers and manufacturers, they can also have unintended consequences. Other countries may retaliate by imposing their own tariffs on goods from the first country, leading to a cycle of escalating trade barriers. When nations respond with their own tariffs, it can escalate into a trade war, disrupting global supply chains and raising prices for consumers. Everyday items, from electronics to groceries, can become more expensive and harder to find. High tariffs have historically been linked to economic downturns like the Great Depression, when global trade collapsed and economies suffered severe consequences. In today's interconnected world, a single tariff can disrupt the production of products assembled from parts made in many countries. Modern manufacturing relies on complex supply chains that stretch across continents, so even a small change in trade policy can have far-reaching effects. World leaders must carefully weigh the risks and benefits of tariffs. While they can be a powerful negotiating tool in international relations, they also carry the risk of sparking conflicts that harm economies worldwide. The impact of tariffs can be seen in financial markets, where uncertainty about trade policy can cause stock prices to fluctuate and businesses to delay investments. Consumers may also feel the effects through higher prices and fewer choices. The use of tariffs is a high-stakes gamble, with ripple effects that touch nearly every corner of the globe. Every decision made by one country can set off a chain reaction that affects millions of people worldwide. Understanding tariffs is key to grasping the stakes in today's global trade battles. By learning how tariffs work and why they matter, we can better understand the challenges and opportunities facing the world economy. China has announced a 100% tariff on a wide range of goods from the European Union and South Korea, a dramatic escalation in the global trade conflict. This means prices for affected products like German luxury cars and Korean electronics will double overnight in China. The move is a direct response to recent trade actions by the United States and its allies. By targeting high-value exports, China is hitting Europe and South Korea where it hurts most. For companies like BMW and Samsung being priced out of China, their largest market, could be devastating. A 100% tariff is less a negotiation tool and more a weapon, designed to shut down trade in key sectors. Beijing's message, align with the US, and you'll pay a steep economic price. The world is now watching to see how Europe and South Korea respond. China's tariffs are the latest chapter in a trade dispute that's been building for years, a conflict that has reshaped the global economic landscape. What began as a simmering disagreement over trade imbalances and intellectual property has now erupted into a full-scale economic standoff with both sides digging in their heels. The first major move came when the US imposed sweeping tariffs on a wide range of Chinese goods, citing what it called unfair trade practices and a need to protect American industries. This marked a turning point, signaling that the era of open trade between the world's two largest economies was coming to an end. China quickly retaliated with its own tariffs, targeting key American exports. The tit-for-tat measures sent shockwaves through global markets, rattling investors and businesses worldwide. As each side raised the stakes, uncertainty became the new normal for international trade. In response, the US introduced a new policy: a minimum tariff of 15% on imports from countries without formal trade agreements. This forced nations like South Korea and the European Union to scramble for deals, hoping to shield their economies from the fallout. From Beijing's perspective, these rapid-fire agreements looked less like routine diplomacy and more like a coordinated effort to isolate China. The Chinese government saw this as a direct threat, interpreting the moves as the formation of an anti-China alliance. Now, Europe and South Korea find themselves in a precarious position, caught in the crossfire between two economic giants. Their leaders are under immense pressure, forced to weigh the risks of angering either Washington or Beijing, knowing that every decision could have far-reaching consequences for their industries and workers. Their attempts to maintain access to the lucrative U.S. market have triggered a crisis with China, threatening vital exports and putting thousands of jobs at risk. Factories are slowing production, and ports are seeing fewer shipments as the uncertainty deepens. Beijing's decision to impose 100% tariffs is more than just an economic measure. It's a stark warning to the world. The message is clear. Siding with the U.S. comes at a steep price, and China is willing to take drastic action to defend its interests. This is a high-risk gamble by China, aimed at fracturing the united front that America is working so hard to build. The diplomatic fallout is already being felt at international summits, where alliances are shifting and old partnerships are being tested. The world's economic balance is shifting before our eyes. Markets are volatile, supply chains are being reconfigured, and the stakes for businesses and governments alike have never been higher. As the dust settles, the next moves by these global powers will determine not just the future of trade, but the shape of the world economy for years to come. China's tariffs are a catastrophe for European and Korean companies deeply invested in the Chinese market. Automakers like Volkswagen and BMW and tech giants like Samsung suddenly find their products unaffordable in China. Chinese brands gain a huge advantage while foreign sales evaporate. The pain spreads beyond big names. Suppliers and small businesses that depend on exports are at risk. Billions invested in Chinese factories and networks are now in jeopardy. Companies face tough choices, absorb massive costs, abandon investments, or scramble to localize supply chains. The shock threatens entire industrial ecosystems in Germany and South Korea. The ripple effects could devastate thousands of businesses, not just the global giants. The economic fallout is just beginning. The impact of tariffs quickly reaches ordinary people. As sales collapse, companies cut production and lay off workers, factory staff, engineers, and more. Fear of unemployment spreads, leading people to spend less, which slows the broader economy. Communities built around major factories face decline as local businesses lose customers and property values fall. Governments are pressured to provide aid and bailouts, straining national budgets. The cycle is vicious. Tariffs hurt businesses, trigger job losses, and force governments to spend more as the economy shrinks. The social fabric of towns and cities is at risk. What starts as a trade dispute can quickly become a crisis for families and communities. The stakes are personal, not just economic. The pain of tariffs is felt far beyond the boardroom. News of China's tariffs sent shockwaves through global markets. European and Korean stocks plunged, especially in auto and tech sectors. Governments condemned China's move and called for emergency talks, desperate to avoid a prolonged trade war. The World Trade Organization urged restraint, but its weakened authority limits its influence. The U.S., meanwhile, is focused on its own trade deals, but even American companies feel the ripple effects. The interconnected global economy means no country is immune. If the conflict deepens, even U.S. markets could suffer. The world is on edge, hoping for de-escalation before the damage becomes permanent. The next steps will determine the fate of the global economy. The stakes have never been higher. From China's perspective, the tariffs are not just a policy tool, they are a necessary defense against what it sees as a coordinated economic offensive led by the United States. Chinese leaders argue that these measures are about protecting national interests, shielding domestic industries, and sending a clear message that China will not be easily coerced or undermined on the global stage. Beijing views the flurry of new trade deals between the US, Europe, and South Korea as more than just routine diplomacy. To Chinese officials, these agreements look like the formation of an anti-China coalition, designed to box China out of key markets and limit its influence in the global economy. The tariffs, then, are meant to demonstrate China's resolve. They signal to the world that China won't be pressured, isolated, or forced to accept terms that threaten its economic sovereignty. For many in China, this is a matter of national pride as much as economics. For Europe and South Korea, however, the situation is far more complicated. These countries find themselves caught in the crossfire of a trade war between two giants, forced to navigate a delicate balance between their vital economic ties with China and their long-standing security alliances with the United States. Their economies are deeply intertwined with China's vast market. Exports to China support millions of jobs across industries, from German car makers to South Korean electronics firms. The prospect of losing access to this market is not just a setback, it threatens the livelihoods of countless families and the stability of entire regions. The fear among business leaders and workers alike is that this conflict isn't just a short-term negotiating tactic, but the beginning of a new era of economic hostility and fragmentation. Headlines warn of a deepening rift, and uncertainty clouds boardrooms and factory floors. The prospect of long-term damage is real. As supply chains are disrupted and investments stall, the sense of vulnerability grows. Companies are forced to reconsider their global strategies, and workers worry about the future of their jobs. Both sides feel threatened, but for Europe and Korea, the risk is existential. The fear is not just about economic loss, but about being forced to choose sides in a conflict that could reshape the world order. Around the globe, governments, businesses, and ordinary people are watching anxiously to see if compromise is possible, or if the world is headed for a prolonged period of division and uncertainty. The choices made in the coming months will not only determine the outcome of this dispute, but will shape the future of global prosperity, cooperation, and peace for years to come. The stakes are nothing less than the future of the world economy, and the path chosen now will echo for generations. The World Trade Organization was created to prevent exactly this kind of trade war. Its job is to enforce rules and resolve disputes, but its authority has been weakened in recent years. With its dispute system paralyzed, the WTO can only urge dialogue, not enforce solutions. Major powers now settle disputes with economic muscle, not rules. The current crisis shows what happens when the referee is sidelined. Countries are taking matters into their own hands, risking a breakdown of the global trading system. The world faces a choice: return to rules-based order, or accept a future of economic conflict. The WTO's warnings are a reminder of what's at stake. As July ends, the world stands at a crossroads. Urgent talks between China, Europe, and South Korea are set to begin, with the hope of lifting tariffs and avoiding deeper crisis. If diplomacy fails, factory shutdowns, layoffs, and recession could follow, spreading economic pain worldwide. There is still a path to peace compromise, strong leadership, and perhaps Europe and Korea mediating between the US and China. The next moves will determine whether the world steps back from the brink or plunges into a full-blown trade war. The power to avert disaster lies with a handful of leaders. They can choose confrontation or dialogue. There are no easy answers. The livelihoods of millions and the stability of the global economy hang in the balance. The coming weeks will shape the world for years to come. The stakes could not be higher.